Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence. We go after all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything. And you need to know it all in order to actually actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on. It's going to be fun. Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence. We go after all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything, and you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on. It's going to be fun.
All right, everybody, today's date, February 3rd, 2021, and this is How the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan. How the Frack We Got Here. We do take the events of the week, midweek, and try to make sense out of it all. Before I do get started, we are trying to make this a family-friendly podcast, so I will watch my language a little bit on here, but unfortunately, there may be some things that we might show that might tend to be on the graphic side, so viewer discretion is advised. All right, so we are now into February, and by God, has January just flew on by just like the top of my hair right now. But we do have a little bit of news in this midweek. Most importantly, who did not know that we would go from Donald Trump to a woman named Marjorie Taylor Greene? If you don't know who this woman is, you very much well should. Then the reason why she's now famous.
McConnell just unleashed a scathing attack against Republican Congresswoman QAnon supporter Marjorie Taylor Greene. He pointed directly at her without actually calling her by name. It's pretty clear, though, who he's talking about. In a statement released by his office, McConnell said, and I quote, "Loony lies and conspiracy theories are cancer for the Republican Party and our country. Somebody who suggested that perhaps no airplane hit the Pentagon on 9/11, that horrifying school shootings were pre-staged, and that the Clintons crashed JFK Jr.'s airplane is not living in reality. This has nothing to do with the challenges facing American families or the robust debates on substance that can strengthen our party." Meanwhile, sources tell CNN Greene could meet as early as tomorrow evening with House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy, as Democrats are demanding she be removed from her committee assignments for an array of unhinged statements, some of which McConnell's statement just referenced. Last week, CNN's K-File uncovered Ms. Greene's support for executing prominent Democratic politicians before she was elected to Congress. And on one social media post recently unearthed, she agreed with people who claimed the school shooting in Parkland, Florida, nearly 3 years ago was a, quote, false flag operation. Coming up, I'll talk with the mother of one of the victims of that shooting, who had a private conversation with Greene, to get her take. But this afternoon...
And I'm just going to stop it right there. So Marjorie Taylor Greene is the newest nutcase of the Republican Party, and she is very much under fire just because of her views as a QAnon supporter. If you don't know who QAnon is, you should be very well aware of. Remember every conspiracy theory from every tinfoil hat from every person? Obama's a Muslim Kenyan that isn't American, or Hillary Clinton had a whole bunch of people killed, or Jeffrey Epstein really is innocent. Yes, all that came from QAnon. So again, with all this being said, she's a QAnon supporter and got elected. Even more so, you should see what most of her did. You would think that all Republicans, I used to say it all the time, Republicans band together. But in this case, with this woman, not really.
Battle for the soul of their party, facing a major test this week about whether they should purge their party of conspiracy-mongering conservatives or punish Republicans who stood up to Donald Trump. Their first test, Marjorie Taylor Greene, a freshman who dabbled in conspiracies, such as spreading falsehoods about whether the 2018 massacre at a Parkland, Florida high school was staged. With more of Greene's controversial views coming to light,
do you have any regrets for anything you said?
And top Republicans staying silent, Senate Republican leaders finally had enough. with the top Senate Republican, Mitch McConnell, calling out Green's loony lies and conspiracy theories, saying they amounted to a cancer for the party.
I think I adequately spoke out about how I feel about any effort to define the Republican Party in such a way.
But McConnell would not say if he should have pushed back earlier against Trump's conspiracy theories.
Do you wish, though, you spoke out about Donald Trump's conspiracies about the election being stolen much earlier than you ultimately did?
Well, with regard to the former president, we're going into an impeachment trial next week.
Senator John Thune, the number 2 Republican, said today that House Republicans have to make a choice. Do they want to be the party of limited government? Or do they want to be the party of conspiracy theories and QAnon? And I think that is a decision they have got to face. Some Republicans aren't taking sides yet.
Before I judge what to do about her, I want to know what the facts are.
But even close Trump allies said there's no room for Green's views, with North Dakota Senator Kevin Cramer telling CNN that he would support her removal from the House Education Committee, which House Democratic leaders are threatening to do this week if House Republicans don't do it themselves.
The tent can only be so big, too. There have to be some sort of guardrails.
All that comes as House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy has yet to weigh in publicly on Green, saying through a spokesman that her comments are deeply disturbing and that the GOP leader plans to meet with her one-on-one. Green has fired back at McConnell, calling him the real cancer in the party. And she has begun to walk back some of her conspiratorial views, including over the horrific school massacres.
It's terrible, the loss that these families go through.
As House Republicans deal with one internal battle, another messy fight also taking shape. This over the future of Liz Cheney, the number 3 House Republican, who joined 9 of her colleagues last month to impeach Trump on a charge of inciting the deadly January 6th insurrection at the Capitol. On Wednesday, House Republicans will meet behind closed doors in what is expected to be a tense meeting, in part focused on Cheney's vote.
So let's get this straight for a second. You have on one hand someone who sat there and said that the Parkland school shooting was staged incident. You have on the other hand that someone actually used their conscience and voted out a disgraceful individual as president. And yet this is a decision. Y'all, I'm just being honest. Marjorie, like I said, Marjorie Taylor Greene. At the time we started this podcast, House Democrats were trying to lean on whether or not just to remove her from all committees. Unfortunately, only the Republican minority leader has the ability to remove Greene, which is Kevin McCarthy. I don't see that happening because even though Republicans eat their young, they certainly don't get rid of them. I'm still trying to figure out how she got elected, but again, it's Georgia. They kind of caught that one on, so actually that was the one that flew under the wire. But it's amazing that Republicans, the party of limited government as they call themselves, which I think is an oxymoron considering the fact of how much they're trying to control government, are literally stuck with ideals. You have this radical left, you have this radical right ideal that they've been using under Trump, and now it's come to, it's like the roosters, and the words of Malcolm X, the chickens have come home to roost. And now they don't know what to do. And honestly, it's comical from our side because at this point, Biden and Kamala Harris have such a low bar. And I'm not saying that Biden and Madam Vice President will do a terrible job. I'm just saying, look at the current example. That is a bar so low that I don't think anybody can limbo under it. That just tells you how high. I mean, literally, Biden has done more in, what, less than 2 weeks than Trump has done in almost 4 years? And that's all reversing his policies. Figure that mess out. But we'll keep up with that story. Like I said, they're actually voting on whether or not to suspend her from all committees that she's assigned to. But like I said before, only Kevin McCarthy, the Republican minority leader, has the ability to call for her removal from Congress. We'll see what happens. The next story I got, guys, is a little bit on the graphic side, just because if you heard this story already, it's going to be a little graphic. Unfortunately, this story comes out of Rochester, New York, about 3 officers and a 9-year-old girl.
I want my dad. I'm not getting in no car until I see my dad.
Here, just stop for a second.
I want my dad.
Control 47, I'm in.
I want my dad. No.
Stop. Kick us, dear. Just relax.
Okay.
You
Wait, my
done?
mom, she's pregnant though.
Are you done?
My mom's
Are you
pregnant. Yes, please just
Stop.
let me go. I want my dad.
Stop. You're...
Wait, can I just please get the snow off of me?
I'll get the snow off you.
It is cold.
Get in the car.
You've had your chance.
Get in the car now.
Okay?
Okay?
You've had your chances.
Stop.
Sit up.
No.
You're acting like a child.
I want to go.
Stop.
I am a child.
I just went back to the house.
My arm. I have a bad arm.
Stand up. Stand up.
Yeah, let
I
that
have a
Stand
bad
up.
arm.
Then stand up.
Get up. Come on.
I want my dad.
I can't hurt. She's on the
I want
ground.
a girl officer.
Stand up. Stand up.
Girl officer. I'm right here. You're gonna get free. Yeah, I want a girl officer.
Stand up.
Stand up.
I want a girl. Please, can you stand up for me?
Okay, they'll get off of you, but you have to get up, okay? Will you get up? Can you let go over? I got her. I got her. I'm gonna pay for you and I don't want to. So sit back. Then sit back. Come on. This is your last chance, otherwise pepper spray's going in your eyeballs. Come on, let's go.
Sorry, just keep me safe for a minute.
Come on.
I want my dad.
Come on. I'm gonna go get him. Now sit back. Come on. I will fix it. I will fix it.
Why don't we separate now? Just stop.
Please. I will get your dad.
No, you said that you were gonna pepper spray me. No, please, no, stop.
Sit back.
Oh, I got a bad arm.
Just spray her.
No, I have
Just
a bad
spray her at this
arm.
point.
Stop. Stop.
Dear.
Stop.
I got her. I got her.
Please, wipe my eye. Wipe my eye, please.
That's hard to watch. That is beyond hard to watch. Now, the story behind this, unfortunately, two officers are suspended. I'm sorry, one officer was suspended and two are placed on administrative leave after this body cam footage of them attempting to detain a 9-year-old girl. The more backstory about this is that the mother called the police, was worried about child because the child was talking about harming herself. So the mother called the police for assistance. The police showed up, and like I said before, in the middle of the video, we don't know where the video began as far as them with the child. However, there's a few questions I have in all of this. When did it take 3 officers to get a 9-year-old? 3 officers? At the same time, it takes 3 of you to basically detain one 9-year-old girl. And at the same time, it's almost like first off, she's a 9-year-old girl. Where's the service? Where is the service? The child services worker, caseworker. Where is her in this? Because on top of that, why are 2 men handling a 9-year-old girl? I mean, give the girl some credit in this video. She sat there and said, "I want a lady officer," because anybody that knows or has been around law enforcement. When it comes to women being arrested, they need to have a female law enforcement officer present, or actually the one doing the detaining. Yet 2 men at the start of this video seem to be on top of a 9-year-old girl. And I keep pointing this out because, again, this is a child. It's not a teenager. It's not an adult. It's a child. And on top of that, the child is screaming for her father and at the same time screaming for her mother. And the police are wondering why the child cannot be calm. I wonder why. Maybe it's because 2 grown men are basically trying to manhandle her and trying to force her into submission by using violence and yelling. That could be it. Or a simple fact of the matter is just that, you kept on threatening of things that you would do to her, which I still don't get the pepper spray. I don't. Again, the pepper spray at this point, I don't even get the handcuffs really, but pepper spraying a 9-year-old. That alone is the cherry on top of questionable activity that these 3 officers have decided to go ahead and force. Especially when the female officer was like, "If you don't stay still, I'm going to pepper spray you." Okay, if you pepper spray somebody, I don't know if many law enforcement officers know this. If you pepper spray somebody, they don't stay still. I mean, you will move. Your eyes will burn. If it gets in your mouth, you'll be coughing. If it gets in your nose, you'll definitely be coughing. It is a non-lethal deterrent. But above all else things, the wonderful effects of being pepper sprayed doesn't make you sit still. And on top of that, I go back to this whole thing. It's just like, to me, it makes no sense as to why 3 officers needed to take down a single 9-year-old. It's just like that one in the other state where the officer body slammed that girl. Body slammed that girl to the point where you can hear her head bounce on the concrete. We covered that story last week. And at the same time, yes, the officer deserves to be suspended. They actually deserve to be fired. Because, again, I'm just going to go out and say it. Had the child been a different color, would they be detained that way? I'm just saying, this goes back to all the times I've sat there and talked about that police are not trained to look for certain things. Police are not trained to look for signs of mental illness. Police are not trained to deal with mental illness and things of that nature and awareness. They're not trained to look for that. Let's be honest, they're either trained to detain or detained to kill. And still, I still can't get over the fact you pepper sprayed a 9-year-old. There's no excuse for that. But we'll follow that story as it goes along, just because, simple fact of the matter, that's unexplainable. As a law enforcement officer, I'm pretty sure those guys had at least a good 200 pounds on that girl. And instead of you trying to de-escalate the situation and really trying to bring it to a resolution, you go back to what you know. I'm going to yell at you, and if you don't do what I want you to do, I'm going to use violence. And yet you wonder why minorities and law enforcement have this wonderful divide. But moving right along, guys, like I said, we don't really have a lot this week. I want to talk about this one because I am just, February is Black History Month. And even though it's the shortest month of the year, we're going to be we always celebrate black people 365. Let's just be honest. But in the shortest month of the year in February, we apparently, and every other business and everybody out there, wants to celebrate Black excellence. Okay, fine. Even though you gave us the shortest month, but fine. But what actually happened here is at a school in Chattanooga, Tennessee, the principal at a middle school is apologizing to the parents after announcing that the school's Black History Month theme would be All Lives Matter. I could not write this any better if I was Stephen King. A principal at a middle school has apologized after announcing the school's Black History Month theme would be All Lives Matter. And I know what you guys are thinking. Look, for all those that read that, you want to know, this is the part that kills me. The principal is black. I wish I could make this up. And she sat there, Principal Drake issued an apology Monday, explaining her inspiration for the theme was a mural in the school which said, "Where every child matters." And it was funny where she sat there and she's like, "As a black woman in leadership, I embrace civil rights. Black History Month and the sacrifices that have been made by those who came before me. I hope that my students, many of whom who look like me, will believe in the possibilities of their unlimited potential." But the theme you went with was All Lives Matter. Look, I'm gonna be honest with you guys. All Lives Matter is really, and forgive me for the use of language on this, it is a BS theme. Black Lives Matter and Blue Lives Matter went out the window, especially when the riot happened. When those white terrorists attacked the Capitol and attacked the cops, All Lives Matter and Blue Lives Matter became canceled. You can't sit there and say All Lives Matter because they was certainly quiet. You couldn't say Blue Lives Matter because they was certainly quiet. But this principle, it amazes me so. The lack of cultural awareness from a black person at that. To sit there and say at your school that All Lives Matter, it's like, it's Black History Month. Have you lost your ever-loving mind? I mean, there's just, look, it's just like I used to say about corporations and when they cater to black people, or when they do something and don't understand the cultural bias it impacts on. This is why I sit there and say that when you don't have none of us in there to ask us to help direct the creative or things of that nature, you run into little PR nightmares like this. And trust me, a lot of parents are going to be looking at that principal very differently, because that is not an honest mistake. Anybody who sees All Lives Matter to explain it in a Black History Month setting has literally and figuratively lost their mind. But moving right along, guys, I know I usually don't report sports usually of this on How the Frack We Got Here, but honestly, this needs to get attention big time. I am talking about this guy, Chad Wheeler, who pled not guilty to domestic violence charges. If anybody doesn't know, he used to be with the Seattle Seahawks. They actually released him because he was brought in on first-degree domestic violence and domestic violence unlawful imprisonment, which means that he was also resisting arrest from officers. He actually viciously beat his girlfriend at the time, saying that his girlfriend should bow to him. And on top of that, the more strange thing about this story is that how little it's been reported. Now, the reason why I say how little it's been reported, because keep in mind, Ray Rice, everybody remembers Ray Rice. Ray Rice and his wife in the elevator, the camera footage that was shown on every news cycle, 24/7, everybody remembers Ray Rice. Everybody remembers. I remember that one guy on Dallas Cowboys, Greg Wallace, I believe his name was. But he's no longer with the Cowboys. But everybody remembers his domestic violence. And it is amazing to me that I just explained two black players, mind you. And also, let's not forget Adrian Peterson, who was also under fire for whooping his kid. He was under fire. Adrian Peterson was under fire for whooping his child. And all of that was wide page news. All of that was posted everywhere. But whenever it comes to one white football player, and domestic violence ensues, how quiet it is. Because he did have a black girlfriend. He did have, I mean, the girlfriend was who he was with, is black at the time. But it amazes me so how quiet the news cycle is about a football player who commits domestic violence on his wife or girlfriend, and he's white. Call it racial bias if you want to, but I couldn't turn a channel without a Ray Rice being pulled up, and all the mountains and hills he had, and all the dirt he had to get through that political PR storm. But what's Chad Wheeler got to deal with? I mean, aside from the fact that he's no longer playing in the NFL and that he pled not guilty to domestic violence charges, which if you've seen the girlfriend's pictures, trust me, he's not getting out of that. But it's how quiet, it is literally how quiet the news cycle is on that. That to me is just amazing, figuratively and literally amazing. What's also amazing, guys, is this other story I was talking about. I mean, we covered this story a little bit last year about the firing of 2 police officers in Atlanta about pulling 2 college students from a car during a protest, in which they used tasers to get them out the car. So what wound up happening was this actually went in front of the Civil Service Board, and they decided to overturn the actual firings of these police officers. They said that pretty much that they were following due process at the time of the laws that were put in place within Atlanta city limits. And that's the part that kills me, because I didn't have time to find the video on this, I apologize, but they used tasers to pull people out of a car that were just trying to get through or get around a protest, and they were using excessive force. Now, of course, the Civil Service Board did actually go back. They're actually made up of residents that live in Atlanta, and so they actually did look over the case and decided that there were extenuating circumstances, and decided that they wanted to go ahead and pretty much reverse the decision and bring the officers back. Here's the kicker. Mayor Bottoms has said that the Civil Service Board did not say that the officers' conduct was lawful. So let me get this straight. So you guys can turn around and sit there and say, oh, well, under extenuating circumstances, they did what they had to do, but we don't know if their conduct was above board. Slight contradiction, maybe? But again, this is where we talk about where we say, are we really getting a fair shake with law enforcement, especially with this one, because those two officers are still facing civil suits from those students. And if I was those students, I would be suing for every penny I possibly can get. But moving right along, guys, like I said, we don't really got a lot, just a few more stories before we get to our feel-good segment. I hate to bring up Dorito, but unfortunately, Dorito will still be in the news until its impeachment trial is underway and finished. And when I tell you guys, the Trump legal team has got a wonderful defense to defend Trump in the impeachment trial, his second impeachment trial. They have a wonderful defense.
Breaking news tonight, former President Trump's new legal team is laying out his defense strategy ahead of next week's Senate impeachment trial, just as House Democrats say they'll accuse him of a betrayal of historic proportions. CBS's Chris Van Cleve reports tonight from the Capitol.
Tonight, Democrats call former President Donald Trump singularly responsible for inciting the assault on the Capitol January 6th, while Mr. Trump's legal team argues his remarks that day are protected by the First Amendment.
And if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore.
In a filing today, Mr. Trump's legal team claims those words were not calling for violent action, but were about the need to fight for election security in general. But House impeachment managers will respond with social media evidence, arguing President Trump's responsibility for the events of January 6th is unmistakable. Mr. Trump's team also plans to argue his second impeachment trial is unconstitutional since he's no longer president, a view not shared by most legal experts. His lawyers also plan to reference Mr. Trump's debunked claims of a stolen election, a move criticized even by Senate Republican jurors.
I think that's not a winning argument.
Still, after 45 Republicans voted to dismiss the trial in a test vote last week, some Democrats see conviction as virtually impossible.
I'm very worried about going through this trial and having the punchline at the end being Trump acquitted again.
And I close the door, and I just keep hearing these bang.
Okay, and I just want to stop it right there because it goes into the accounts, what happened at the U.S. Capitol. But yes, Trump's legal team, in their wondrous defense, has sat there and said, oh, Trump can't be held liable for the riot and the failed coup d'etat because it's First Amendment. Now I see why so many people dropped out from his legal team until he got who he got. Because Trump is trying to say that his legal team, Trump's legal team, I should say, will be arguing in the Senate that his First Amendment speeches are protected when he sat there. But the problem is, it's the timing. Number one, you did it on the day that they were doing the electoral vote count. You did it in front of the U.S. Capitol where they actually were. On top of that, you sat there and said, if you don't do something, they're going to steal this election from you. You said this to a crowd of people that literally incited a failed coup d'etat. I say this before about free speech. I have said this before. Even this podcast is based on free speech. But you can say whatever you want to say, but you are not absolved from the consequences of what you say. If I turned around and told a whole bunch of black people that watch this podcast, hey, with all these white people out here, stand back and stand by. And let's just say, nothing will happen. God forbid nothing happens. But if I said something like that, and it got put out to the world, and then a group of black folks decided to go mess up a lot of white folks, am I not held liable? Because they'll sit there and say, oh, well, we watched how the Frack We Got Here said, and Will said to all black folks, stand back and stand by. Crackers is coming. Yes, I am held liable. I can be held liable. Why? Because I've incited people. Hence why the charges against Dorito is inciting a riot. And number two, of course, stealing the election. Election security. Again, we could go back and forth all this, but let's just call it what it is. This most recent election was the safest election in our nation's history. Every state did their best to make sure that every vote counted, and every state double-checked, triple-checked, and made sure that all votes were legitimate. There wasn't a steal. The only thing that Dorito didn't, Dorito told his people, don't do mail-in votes. What did Democrats say? Vote however you want. You can vote by mail. You can come to the polls. You can come early voting. We'll get you registered. We'll get you a ride. But what did Trump say? Oh, well, don't do mail-in voting, even though he's mailed-in voted for the last 4 elections. Just saying. It's not that hard. It's not that hard to sit there and go from there. When you it's not hard to go from that, but it's also comical. But there is one point out of that whole thing. Yes, for Donald Trump to be impeached, that means along with the 50 Democrats, 17 Republicans will need to cross that line. Now, if those 17 Republicans that voted to impeach Trump would also cross that same line again, that would be great. But again, what does that say about Republicans, honestly, that don't want to impeach Trump? I mean, he wants to run for office again. He's eyeing 2024. He really is. He truly believes that he can get back up and run again. And that's what I've been saying about this impeachment from Jump Street. The impeachment is more than just getting him out. Once a president is impeached, they lose their pension, they lose their Secret Service detail, and they lose the ability to run for any office ever again. That alone that last one should be alone a reason to impeach Trump. Because again, for him to go down, you always want to be the first in something. Guess what? You're the first president to be impeached twice. But again, we'll see what happens when it unfurls, because of course that trial does begin very soon. The next to last story that I got, guys, which I find interesting because, again, let's be honest, it's always funny at these religious schools. 2nd grade girl was expelled from Christian school over girl crush. A private school in Oklahoma expelled a 2nd grader and cut ties with her family after the little girl told a female classmate that she had a crush on her. Apparently, this happened on the playground, and of course, it got to the vice principal, who quote unquote asked her how she feels about girls liking girls. She then said, then they said, well, if I'm being honest with you, I think it's okay for girls to like girls, and I mean, and of course, she said she looked disgusted and surprised at my answer. And again, it always kills me when it gets to this part, where Shelton said that the school officials told her to take her daughter home and not to bring her back the next day. When they got home, Shelton and Chloe started crying and told her the teacher said the Bible says that you can only marry a man and that you can only have kids with a man, and it's a sin for girls to like girls, and it's not in the Bible, and it's not okay in God's eyes. Y'all, look, religion, whatever you want to believe is whatever you want to believe. Cool. But this is a 2nd grader. So, 2nd graders, I always put this way in the mind of a child, especially a 2nd grader, their minds change every 5 seconds. Okay? They're children. Let them be children. But again, I shouldn't be surprised, because I have my own gripes with religious schools. I really do. I have gripes. But I'm, not going to go into it here. But it amazes me so that they expelled her because she doesn't fall in, what she actually did as a child prevents her from being in the Christian faith. Come on. I'm sorry. Come on. But then again, this is why I fear about these private schools, especially religious schools, because, it's almost a robotic tone to things. It's a robotic thing. Well, the Bible says this. The Bible says that. Really? Do you cherry pick every scripture, or do you just go along with what makes you feel good? But again, I'm just not surprised because the school's response on this was just that, well, we are just not going to just talk about it right now, but we're going to expel her. Yeah, says a lot from a Christian school. They say they accept everybody. But the last thing I got, guys, like I said before, if I followed the Democratic bill, Joe Biden, along with his Made in America plan, he still has his $1 trillion COVID bill that honestly might actually go through and actually give us an idea when you might be getting those $1,400 stimmies.
Signaling he does not intend to negotiate the terms of his COVID relief bill. He came out of Monday's nearly 2-hour meeting with Senate Republicans determined to go big. We get more now from CBS's Ed O'Keefe.
State of affairs. President Biden pushing ahead with his nearly $2 trillion COVID relief plan today, telling Senate Democrats in a lunchtime call that the Republican counteroffer of $600 billion isn't enough for this crisis.
We cannot afford to dither, delay, or dilute We need a big, bold package along the lines of what President Biden has proposed.
Democrats are trying to fast-track the president's proposal with or without Republican support. Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, who once used the same tools to push through a $1.5 trillion tax cut, criticized Democrats.
They've chosen a totally partisan path. I think that's unfortunate.
Also tonight, the current president is trying to reverse some of the former president's most controversial decisions regarding immigration.
I'm not making new law. I'm eliminating bad policy.
Executive orders signed today seek to reunite about 600 children separated from their parents under President Trump's zero-tolerance border crackdown. Most of the parents have been deported back to Mexico or Central America. Mr. Biden is also seeking to reverse the Trump-era policy requiring thousands of asylum seekers to stay in Mexico as their cases are processed. But the White House said today the changes are not an invitation for migrants to start heading towards the U.S. border.
This is not the time to come to the United States. We need the time to put in place an immigration process so people can be treated humanely.
So it's a lot. I like the fact that, Joe ain't going with it. Joe is not going for it. He says, look, this is the deal. Here's the deal. Joe Biden was, here's the deal. We gonna get this through. I love that because, again, this is the reason why the Democrats have a majority in the House and have a slim majority in the Senate, but a majority nonetheless. You can now, and I've been saying this because to Democrats who may be, may be told about my podcast, hey, you might be watching it, I don't know. But if you do hear this, why don't you guys basically turn about as fair play? Republicans pushed through whatever they wanted to push through from the Senate because they had Moscow Mitch as the Senate Majority Leader, who was basically the wall and blocking bills from being heard. And again, now that that wall's no longer there and you guys literally control it all, run everything through that you've ever wanted to. Right now, for the next 2 years, this is a gold mine for the Democrats. Push through every bill. Push everything you want to. Because when it comes down to it, Republicans can't do spit. Because unless, like I said, and also Democrats, this is a wonderful time to be united. Every bill should have 100% Democratic backing. Because you know why? Because good old Madam VP Harris is sitting right there for the tiebreaker, just in case there's an issue. Again, people need assistance. Now, I'm not saying the $1,400 checks is a one-time thing. I have been saying this because it's amazing how Bernie Sanders said so long ago, at the beginning of this pandemic, he sat there and said, we need to start issuing $2,000 checks per person until the pandemic is over. And how quickly that idea was shot down until Dorito pushed to $1,200. Then he got through barely a $600. And now we're all sitting here waiting for $1,400. Again, what is wrong with monthly checks? Canada has gotten it right since the beginning of this pandemic, and you don't see Canadians bugging out. But again, we're just going to see what happens when it goes from there. Like I said before, they have the ability to push it through. I say, why not? That also being said, guys, like I said, we're going to go on to our Feel Good News segment. Just because, we cover a lot of things on how Frack We Got Here. Sometimes they're not the best parts. Sometimes they're doom and gloom. But we wanted to, try to lead, because tomorrow's Thursday, Friday Eve. So we're hoping to leave some things on a good foot, at least try to. And I like this story because it's a little bit based off the GameStop rush that happened earlier this week, where a college student who actually made $30,000 off the GameStop stocks that he purchased decided to take that money and basically purchase video consoles and then donate them to a children's hospital. In this case, it was I believe it was Minnesota's Children's Hospital, and actually it's the consoles and games that purchased right there. Honestly, I love it because again, he could have. He made a good mint off his stocks, and well so. But I like the fact that he decided to pay it forward and actually help, because I'm gonna tell you like this: as an avid video gamer, children love video games. And what better way to lift their spirits in a hospital by giving them video games to play? Because, like I said, video games save lives. I don't mean to sound like a PSA, but it does. But again, kudos to that man for just saying, you know what, I'm going to turn around and actually try to help out my neighborhood and pay it forward. Never can knock that. But that's all that we got here, guys. So before I do get out here, I do have some shameless plugging to get out the way. I did actually want to talk about my travel business at first. Yes, your boy has a travel business, believe it or not. And on this travel business, I actually decided to adopt the name that, well, that I would say that my, hang on a second, because my screens don't want to work with me right now. There we go. So, I want to talk about my travel called Uncle Obie's Adventures and More. Yes, your boy does travel, and I'm talking about anywhere. You want to go in state? Cool, I can help you with that. You want to go out of state? I can help you with that. You want to go out of country? As long as you got COVID things, as long as you're COVID prepared, sure, we can help with that. My goal is to basically be your travel concierge, whether it's cars, whether it's hotels, whether it's flights, it's all the above. If you want to go on a boat to Alaska, let me help you with that. And of course, like I said before, at Uncle Obie's Adventures and More, we don't just sell travel, we sell memories. And at the same time, let me tell you about my $100 referral. Yes, I will give money. The reason why I will give money is because I want to motivate people. And nothing motivates people more than money. So in this case, like I said with my referrals, guys, if you refer somebody to me and they book anything with me, car, hotel, travel, anything, if they do it and they book it, that means you, who referred said person, will get $100 from me. And there is no limit, and I mean that. There is no limit on referrals. So the more people you refer to me, the more money you get from me. So when they book, you get paid. So again, like I said on Facebook, it's called Uncle Obie's Adventures and More. Or just hit me up, William Buchanan, on Facebook, and let me know about your travel plans, because I can definitely help you with that. Because, like I said, and plus, who doesn't like free money? All you're basically doing is basically referring people to me, and you get paid as long as they book. With also being said, guys, also, do you have custom shirts? Do you have things that that you would love to do, or have an idea to put on a shirt, a cup, or a mug? Then Kelly, Little Creations by Kelly is for you. She is a person that does certain apparel like this, by the way, that she has done, which is various things, including Christmas shirts for all you people that like to be festive. She even does certain shirts like Man Down, if you're just trying to be petty. And she also has Lock Life, which was also one thing that she created for me, and I certainly appreciate that. Also, she can also create other types of shirts, and she does aprons and masks. Trust me, you'll always need a mask as long as you got COVID-19 out there. So why not have something decorated on it, whether for work or for yourself? And also, if you like a certain shirt, especially for kids' birthdays, or also for aprons, if you do that wine and sip thing. Pretty much, if it's rational and it can be done, then Kelly can actually help you with that. Definitely look her up on Facebook at Little Creations by Kelly, and she'll be able to help you from there. And also, guys, I have been saying this. We are February 3rd. We are February 3rd right now, which means we are 11 days. We are 11 days from when she expects something. She or he, being your significant other, they're going to expect something on Valentine's Day. And at this moment, you have less than 11 days. That's a little over a week and a few days. And if you're running out of ideas, then Tanya's Touch of Elegance can step in and help you with that. And I'll let her explain her Valentine's Day special.
Hi, I'm Tanya with Tanya's Touch of Elegance. And during this COVID time, trying to stay safe, we are going to present a Valentine's Day special for two. I'm going to present this video, and you just give me a call or text me at the end of the video and let me know if you're interested, and we can have a dinner for two delivered to you. I will have the prices forthcoming by the end of the week, but just a little something to pique your interest. Thank you.
Okay, and I gotta apologize, guys. I wish I could have blown the screen up just a little bit bigger. Unfortunately, either my laptop or Facebook doesn't like me right now, so I'll go ahead and try to make this as clear as humanly possible. So the number that you see at the bottom, 615-438-546, is the number that you can reach Tanya's Touch of Elegance to place your order, or you can go to the Facebook page at Tanya's Touch of Elegance and do Facebook Messenger to let her know if you'll be taking advantage of the Valentine's Day special. Please keep in mind, guys, the cutoff date for the Valentine's Day special is Monday, February 8th. Once again, the cutoff date for this is Monday, February the 8th. Also, if you go to Tanya's Touch of Elegance, you'll actually go up here, and now the prices are available for the world to see. So you can definitely on your Facebook go to Tanya's Touch of Elegance, pull up the prices. I'm trying to do that now. Unfortunately, like I said, Facebook doesn't like me, so you definitely can go to Tanya's Touch of Elegance on Facebook, and you'll be able to actually see the prices. Yeah, like I told you, Facebook don't like me right now. So you'll be able to go up and see the prices from there. And like I said, definitely take advantage of that. And also, not just for Valentine's Day, I mean, scroll down. The woman does cakes. She does baked potatoes. She does asparagus. She does decorative cakes. Who doesn't love decorated cakes? Who doesn't love chicken? Who doesn't love fried okra? Who doesn't love green beans? Trust me, as a guy that has actually eaten her cooking, trust me, you will not be disappointed. With that being said, guys, the last thing I'll have is, last but certainly not least, is my boy Vaughn, Big BZA Dot on Facebook, which I will bring up very soon. There we go. So Big BZA Dot on Facebook. If you're not his friend, you should be. If not, he's friendly sometimes. But he's actually going to be returning back very soon. With his podcast, and trust me, they are definitely missed. I'll just go ahead and just do a brief overlay of what every podcast is. His first one is the BST. Now, what is the BST? The BST is a news podcast. That news can be music, video games, or trailers, as you love to show. I call him the king of weird trailers, just because he does find the most weirdest ones, but at the same time, he finds interesting ones. But it's definitely an interactive show. He also has another show called, for the purposes of this podcast, we're going to call it RAF. Now, what is RAF? It is an entertainment video. It's like basically a pool of ratchets we sometimes dip our toes into to take a break from life. And trust me, the videos are always funny and always set to a theme. And also an interactive show as well, as Vaughn just sometimes wonders if he's crazy or not. Trust me, his rants are worth the watch. Another podcast that I'm waiting for him to come back on is the Rhythmness Music Podcast. So you can reminisce over the rhythm, where Vaughn, myself, and others will listen to a gabble of music, whether that Vaughn brings or he asks us to bring. And we're different on the musical scale, but hey, differences in musical scale leads to great conversations, and that's what the Rhythmness Music Podcast is all about. And it's also an interactive show as well. And he also has his, and if I can remember words, that'd be great. He also has this pop-up show called Funkin' Around, which is basically a music podcast in which he makes beats like this. And that's just a sample of the beats that he makes. He is a beat maker per se, and I hope he gets back into the pool about that, because he is definitely talented. But Funkin' Around is a pop-up show depending on when he feels that musical inspiration. But definitely look up Big BZA Dot to see when that happens, and also when he'll also be returning. Big BZA Dot on Facebook and on all social media. Now that I guess I can get off Facebook, because Facebook did not like me right now. So, with that being said, guys, I do have other podcasts as well. Going off my my podcast schedule, it has slightly changed a little bit. Of course, every Tuesday from 7 to 9 p.m. is the Burned Out Podcast, in which I tell stories about an IT background by dealing with the public. So if you've worked in customer service, retail, or dealt with the public in general and have definitely special stories to tell about it, then it's definitely going to be up your alley. Like I said, it's meant to be funny, so if you find it funny, that's great. And if not, then you need to lighten up, because I'm talking about you. Aside from that, guys, of course, every Wednesday, we do the midweek edition of How the Frack We Got Here that you're currently watching now. On Fridays, we actually moving Get Bit to Fridays. So Get Bit Podcast, my blurry podcast, which covers video games, anime, superhero television, movies. And trust me, there's a lot of information about movies lately that's coming out, as well as some new information, especially there's a new Coming to America True trailer that I posted on my Facebook that I thought was pretty funny and makes me want to look forward to the movie. But that is this Friday from 8 to 10 p.m. will be Get Bit. And of course on Saturday from 10 a.m. to noon is the weekend edition of How the Frack We Got Here. And a little bit later that night, between 8 to 10 p.m. on Saturday night, will be the Off Limits Podcast, in which nothing is off limits. No subject is too hard to overturn. I mean, I literally had a conversation with my girlfriend about the toilet seat being up and why y'all can't turn around and look down. Yes, I did do a podcast on that because I still haven't gotten an answer. But just an example of just an example of the conversation and subjects that we have. All of my shows can be found on my Facebook page at William Buchanan or their own Facebook or YouTube pages. Just simply look them up by their names. The Burned Out Podcast, How the Frack We Got Here, Get Bit, that is GITBIT, and the Off Limits Podcast. And definitely like, share, and subscribe from there. So if you like what I did, guys, please let me know. If you didn't like what I did, please let me know. I'm open to criticism either way, as I'm just trying to make this platform more informative than anything else. That's the whole point of How the Frack We Got Here. We are not trying to change minds. We're not trying to persuade you. We are simply trying to do what news stations of old did, which is basically inform you of all the facts and allow you to make up your minds for yourselves. Because an informed community can make a lot better decisions than an uninformed one, and an uninformed one got us Trump, and that's how the frack we got here. Aside from that, guys, please wear a mask. COVID-19 is real. Please mask up. Please do social distancing. Please only go out if necessarily you have to. At the same time, thank you all nurses, doctors, nurses aides, doctors aides, those that work in hospitals. You guys have done tremendous work. Thank you essential workers, including teachers, first responders, those that work in grocery stores, gas stations, truck drivers, those that work in warehouses like Amazon, and those that work in logistics like United States Postal Service, UPS, FedEx, DHL, and beyond. You guys are, like I said, you guys may not have the luxury of working from home as many of us have, but your work is still great, and I wish more could be done for you than just saying thank you, and also just trying to be nice, because I understand how hard it can be when you're trying to work in a COVID situation, just trying to make sure you're safe, but at the same time, still trying to help everybody out. So, with that being said, guys, like I said, we've made it through hump day, and hopefully Thursday will be better for a lot of us. Let's be kind to each other, and we'll all get through this.